Okay, welcome to tonight's class. We'll be discussing the theme of tonight. We'll be discussing the Yahrtzeit of Aharon HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, which actually, as we'll learn and discuss tonight, it is the only person who is mentioned, their Yahrtzeit is mentioned in the Torah. Hang on a sec, a couple more people are joining. We'll just wait for them to join. Just one more minute here, and then we'll continue. Good evening, Noel. Welcome. Good evening, Chana Yael. So we're just getting started here. The theme of tonight that we'll be discussing is Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, which is the only individual which his Yahrtzeit, the day of his passing, is explicitly mentioned in the Torah, the exact date for his passing. And we will explore this from a number of areas, beginning with the verses themselves, which speak about his passing. Then we will explore a Mishnah that quotes the behavior of Aharon. And then from the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, which brings that Mishnah, we'll go through each step and have a clearer picture of the uniqueness of Aaron himself and what we can learn from his behavior in our individual lives. So let's jump right into it here, beginning with a verse which is actually at the end of last week's parsha, or in the middle of last week's parsha, which the parsha of Maseh, the final book of Numbers, recounts and reviews the 42 steps, the 42 journeys that the Jewish people took as they were leaving Egypt, from the time they left Egypt up until their entry into the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, all the journeys that they went through, which recounts 42 places that they stopped in along the way, 42 travels. And during that, those verses which speak about at the beginning of Parshat Maseh, the Torah tells us that they traveled to this place, they camped there, and goes on and says they traveled to the next place and camped there. In the middle of recounting these 42 steps, in the middle, when it comes to the place of Hor HaHar, the Mount Hor, over there's an intermission of a few verses which mention, again, regarding Aaron's passing at that point in time. It's important to remember that the story and the details, more of the details of his passing, were already discussed earlier in Parshat Chukat, which is actually, Chukas is the place where it actually took place, when they were traveling near Mount Hor. And then in this parsha, in Parshat Maseh from last week, just recounts again all the steps that they took. When it comes to the traveling from Mount Hor, from Har HaHar, over there, the Torah inserts again a number of verses. There, one additional point which the Torah mentions in this particular parsha in Maseh, over what was already mentioned previously, is the date of when he passed. So let's read the verses here. And source number 1, Aaron the priest ascended Mount Hor at God's bidding and died there on the first day of the 5th month in the 40th year of the children of Israel's exodus from Egypt. Aaron was 123 years old when he died at Mount Hor. So in the Torah's counting of months, the very first month is always Nisan. So if we count from Nisan, which is called the first of the months in the Torah, so for biblical numbers and dates, usually Nisan is the first month. So we count Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av. We'll have the 5th month will be the month of Av, the Hebrew month of Av, Menachem Av, the month that we're in currently. Rosh Chodesh Av was just a few days ago. And that is the day on which he passed. He passed away in the 40th year, so just prior to them entering into the land of Israel. Actually, Aaron, his sister Miriam, as well as Moses himself, all passed away within that year prior to them entering into the land, into the future land of Israel. So the date that he passed away was on Rosh Chodesh Av, on the first day of the month of Av. Now, as a side note, the Hebrew word, the name of the month, Av, also means father. And because we are now in the time of mourning the destruction of the temple, from between the 17th of Tammuz, the fast of Shivasar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, and the fast of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, this 3-week period is a period of mourning the destruction of the temple. On the 17th of Tammuz is when the walls of Jerusalem, of Yerushalayim, were breached, and they entered into the land. And then the last 9 days from Rosh Chodesh Av until the 9th of Av is when it became extremely difficult for the Jewish people. And finally, on the 9th of Av is the day when the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, was burnt down. Both the first and second temples were both destroyed on the 9th of Av. So this is a time where we practice extra mourning. We don't take haircuts throughout the entire 3 weeks, and more specifically, the last 9 days from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av, we don't drink wine or eat meat, and other additional signs of mourning, as not listening to lively music and such during this sad time frame. So because of that, our sages added, it's typically the month, instead of just being called Av, is called Menachem Av, which means comforting Av, comforting the month of Av, which can also be translated as comforting the Father, the comforting Father, that Hashem is comforting us during this difficult time. Hashem is together with us in our exile and in our challenges. We are comforting Hashem, so to speak, in this period of time, knowing that we are all together in these difficult and challenging days. So here we have the date for Aaron's passing, which is interesting to note that he is the only one which his Yahrtzeit was actually mentioned. Now, when we were looking at Rashi's commentary on the Torah, which Rashi is the foremost commentary which discusses at a very simple level. In his introduction, he says that he's writing his book in order that a 5-year-old student should be able to understand and learn. So one of the rules in understanding and learning Rashi's commentary is that things go in order. If a child begins studying the Torah from the beginning, the book of Genesis, from Bereshit, then all of that knowledge will accumulate until the point where they are up to. So if something was already previously explained, it doesn't need to be explained again. If something was not explained prior, then it can pose a question later on if that were to come for the first time. So the Rebbe asks this question: the school child studying the Torah for the very first time will have a question. I have not seen any other instance in the entire Torah where the date of a person's passing is specified. The date of the passing is not specified for Abraham, not for Isaac, for Jacob, go even earlier, not for Noah, not for Adam, the first man. None of those dates of their passing is mentioned. And not for Aaron's siblings, Moses and Miriam. So although we do know the dates of their passing, but they are not explicitly written in the written Torah, we learn them from comparing verses. The oral tradition tells us what the dates of those passing were, but there's no verse in the Torah that explicitly tells us what the dates of their passing were. Why then does the Torah specify the precise date of Aaron's passing in the 40th year, in the 5th month, on the 1st of the month? What is unique about Aaron, that we are mentioning his Yahrtzeit, his day of passing specifically? So in order to understand this, let's look a little bit further into what we know about the dates of his siblings. We do actually know the dates of the passing for Moses and Miriam, for his younger brother and older sister. Moses was passed away on Adar 7, the 7th of Adar. and Miriam on Nisan 10, the 10th of Nisan. We know that the Talmud tells us that Moses, he was born on the 7th of Adar and passed away on the 7th of Adar. He lived a complete 120 years. His sister Miriam passed away on the 10th of Nisan, which is one of the reasons why we commemorate Shabbat Hagadol before Pesach, before Passover, even though it occurred on the 10th of Nisan, but we, instead of celebrating it on the actual date of the 10th of Nisan, we commemorate it on the Shabbos before Pesach, because the 10th of Nisan was Miriam's Yahrtzeit. We don't want to put the two together, and therefore we commemorate it not on the day of the month that it took place, the miracles of Shabbat Hagadol, but the miracles that took place, then we commemorate on the Shabbos before instead of on the 10th of Nisan. But these dates are deduced in the oral Torah through various calculations. The date of Aaron's passing, by contrast, is spelled out explicitly in the written Torah in the 5th month on the 1st of the month. So it's clearly tells us that it was on the first day of the month of Av. What is so unique about Aaron? The beginner student already learned about the event of Aaron's passing in the portion of Chukat. So this was already, he already knows that Aaron passed away. The verses there state the whole community learned that Aaron had expired, that he passed away, and all the Israelites mourned him for 30 days. Rashi explains that both men and women all mourned because Aaron would pursue peace and restore love between disputants and between husbands and wives. So this is another lesson that Rashi is teaching us from the terminology which is used in the Torah, which each word and letter is precise. When the Torah speaks about the passing of Aaron, it says in the Hebrew, it's Vayivku et Aaron shloshim yom kol Beit Yisrael. All of the house of Israel, the entire house of Israel is mourned Aaron's passing for 30 days. Whereas when it speaks about Moses' passing, it uses the word Vayivku b'nei Yisrael. The children of Israel cried. And more particularly, Rashi points out there that it was the b'nei Yisrael and not the b'not Yisrael. It was the males amongst the Jewish people and not the women that were as affected by Moses' passing. Why is it that Aaron was mourned by the entire community, both the men and the women, entire families mourned Aaron's passing equally? Because he was known not just for being a spiritual leader, someone that served in the temple, which his whole name and title, which we refer to him as, and he's known as Aharon HaKohen, Aaron the high priest. He only became a Kohen when he was much later on in life, when he was 83 or 84. He was 3 years older than Moses was, and when the Jewish people left Egypt, Moses was 80, Aaron was 83, and perhaps a year later, after the giving of the Torah, when they established the tabernacle, the Mishkan, is when he became a Kohen. So it was only in the last third part of his life that he was a high priest. Then his entire life was spent bringing peace between people, leading the Jewish people. He was a determined leader in his own right, not just in spiritual guidance, but also in bringing people together. So in order to bring people together, he has to actually go and find out and involve himself in people's personal lives to know what's going on. That means that he had so many people knew him on a very personal level that he was able to understand and knew what were the internal disputes were not just between friends, but even between families, between spouses, between husband and wives. He understood and knew what their differences were, what their issues were, and he worked with each party to resolve those issues and brought a tremendous amount of love and peace between people. And because he was so involved in bringing people together, he was much more strongly missed and mourned when he passed away by the entire Jewish community. As we see here's from Avot de Rab Natan. Avos de Rab Natan is a medrash, And the Medrash describes to us what exactly Aaron would do. What would Aaron do in order to bring people together? When two people were quarreling, Aaron would approach one. "My son," Aaron said, "your friend is full of regret and tearing his clothing, saying, 'Woe is to me, how can I raise my eyes and see my friend? I am ashamed, for I am at fault to him.' Aaron would sit with him until he had removed any feeling of animosity from his heart. So he would sit with the person, telling him, 'Your friend is so upset, so sad at this argument, this fallout. He wants to make amends, but he's not sure how to.' And he would sit with the person until he would help them remove any negative feelings for the person that they got into an argument with. Then he went to the other party, telling them the same thing. He would do the same thing until they too were free of animosity. So this is somebody. There are those that are yentas that go around talking about everything that happened. This one did this to that person, that one did that to the other person, and spread rumors, and all things start becoming a whole excitement and problems because somebody was talking about too many people to too many other people, too many things. But here we have the exact opposite, that Aaron would go around and not announce the things that people did, but he did this in a very confidential way, discussing with each and every individual what their issues were with another person, and then working it out between them. Working them out between the people, telling one the other person really wants to make amends, but he's not sure how to do it. He knows you're so upset at him, and he would sit with them till he was calmed down. Then he would go to the next person, tell them the same thing, until they were ready. Their feelings would quell their feelings of animosity to each other until they were ready to see each other again and make friends. This was not just between friends, but also between spouses, and kept the peace between people. So this unique quality of making peace between people is only found in Aaron, not in Moses and Miriam, and not in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. On the contrary, we find that Abraham himself had a dispute with King Nimrod. Yitzchak had a dispute with his brother Yishmael, and Jacob had a dispute with his brother Esav. We also don't find this quality in Noach or Adam. In any of these people, we don't find this unique quality of bringing peace between people. The only person in whom we find the quality of pursuing peace and restoring love between disputants in such a strong way is Aaron. So he is the one that was known, very well known for bringing people together. Since at the death, go back slide. Since at the death of Aaron there was a unique and unparalleled feature, there's no wonder that the Torah accords his passing special importance by specifying the precise date in the 5th month on the 1st of the month. We can take this further and suggest that since the entire people mourned Aaron's death together, it follows logically that when the anniversary of this event came the next year, the entire people gathered together to commemorate the event and consider how they better follow his example. So here we find this idea that not only was it the year of his passing that the entire Jewish community mourned Aaron's passing, both the men and the women and entire families, but also the next year, what would happen as such a tremendous event that took place, that had a tremendous impact on people in such a way. The next year, I'm sure it's logical to say that they would have commemorated it in such a way that everyone was trying to get together and figure out how can we continue on the legacy of Aaron, how can we continue on behaving like him and bring peace between people. So because of this, because of his being such a peaceful and loving person, and not just like all of us want peace in the world and want good things for everyone, but Aaron actually went into the minds and hearts of each and every individual that he encountered, listened to them, understood them, and then went and tried to resolve their conflicts they had with other people. The Torah specifies the exact date of Aaron's death because it was an event of national importance to the entire Jewish people. An event commemorated every year through generations. By contrast, we have no indication that the entire Jewish people were present at the passings of Moses and Miriam, and as a result, these events were not commemorated by the entire nation in subsequent years. So although, of course, Moses was a great leader, one of the greatest leaders that lived on the face of this earth, the Torah tells us about him that there was no humble person that lived on the face of earth like Moses did. Miriam was a great woman in her own right as well. The well that fed the entire generation for 40 years all came in the merit of Miriam. And in fact, the entire Moses' birth itself was actually in the merit of Miriam. But that's a story for another time. The point, the idea that we're expressing is that although Moses and Miriam and many others were tremendously great leaders amongst the Jewish people, we don't find by any other one that the entire Jewish community, all around, without an exception, every single one of them were apart and saddened by their passing to such an extent that they all cried and mourned for 30 days, and in the following years commemorated his passing. So this is the only Yahrtzeit which the Torah explicitly gives us a date for, and since then is commemorated each and every year, which just passed on Rosh Chodesh of a couple days ago. So let's take a look at firstly how this relates to this specific time period of the year, and then we will delve a little bit deeper into exactly what Aaron's character is and how the sages of the Mishnah teach us that we should learn from him. So Aaron's general conduct is closely related to the theme of this time period that we're in, which is referred to in the Hebrew as Bein HaMetzarim. Bein HaMetzarim literally means between the tzaris, between the times of suffering, between the times you have the two ends of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were penetrated, and Tisha B'Av, the two tzaris that took place of entering into the city and destroying the Beis HaMikdash. It's called the time in between these, the 3 weeks of mourning commemorating the destruction of the temple. The reason, which the Talmud tells us, for the destruction of the temple and the subsequent exile was because there was baseless hatred among the Jewish people. This is what the reason for the destruction of the temple is because people hated each other without any reason, basing it on if someone did something wrong to someone else and they treated them incorrectly, then there's a reason to not like them, a reason to not get along with them, a reason to stay away from them. But there was a time when people just didn't like each other just for no reason other than, didn't like his nose or something. For no other reason. There's nothing factual to base their animosity amongst each other, other than they woke up feeling like that one day. This is the exact opposite of Aaron's conduct: absolute love for fellow Jews. As we'll explore a little bit more, the love that Aaron had to each and every individual. This has special relevance for us during the 3 weeks, and especially in the 9 days between the first of the month of Av, the date of Aaron's passing, and Tisha B'Av. Most of the mourning customs mentioned in the original Code of Jewish Law are only for the 9 days, while the restrictions for the 3 weeks are added in the Ramaz glosses. I'll come back to that in a moment. At this time, we need to increase in all matters related to love for our fellow Jews to the point of baseless love. This will negate the reason for the exile, and as a result, the exile itself. So if the exile came about, the destruction of the temple came about because of baseless hatred, How do we rectify that? Is through loving other people for no other reason, just that they're a fellow Jew, another person, and therefore we should love them and care for them as an individual for no other reason. It's easy to like people that are nice to us. It's easy to like people that do good things for us, in a nice relationship with. But loving people for no other reason, just in the very fact that they are our brother or sister, part of the Jewish people, that's something that, in order to get rid of the exile, get rid of the reason for the destruction of the temple, we need to rectify that with baseless love. And that is what we can learn from Aaron, as we will explore a little bit further. As far as the Code of Jewish Law, the way that the Shulchan Aruch was written by a sage named Rabbi Yosef Karo. He was of Sephardic descent, and he lived in Sephardic communities, Spanish communities. The Ramah, which was a short an acronym for Rabbi Moshe Israels. His father was Isser, was known as Rabbi Moshe Israels. So if you take the Resh, the R from Rabbi, the M or Mem from Moshe, and the Aleph from Israels, then we'll spell out Ramah. So he's called Ramah. As the differences amongst the communities in the Sephardic and Ashkenazic communities didn't begin with just the different foods, that these ones like spicy foods and those ones like more bland foods, and all different differentiations between the communities. Unlike today, where we can have a thought, and with a click of a button we can share it with the entire world. At those points in times of Jewish history, every community had their leading sages, their leading rabbis that ruled on specific halachic questions of the day. And the communities, the Ashkenazic and Sephardic communities, had very little interaction with each other's by way of messengers or bringing writings from one place to another was very extremely limited. And therefore, in every place when halachic questions arose, the rabbis in one area could have ruled and was accepted to act in a specific manner, and in the Ashkenazic communities, perhaps the rabbis there ruled a little bit differently. So for 99%, the halacha is entirely the same, good for everyone. But in gray areas where they needed to have a halachic ruling, in each place it was a little bit different, and the customs of those places grew accordingly. So after Rabbi Yosef Karo, which was was Sephardic rabbi, wrote the Shulchan Aruch and was widely accepted, the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Israels, which was an Ashkenazic rabbi, came and added glosses to it to add the differences in Ashkenazic custom. So in the original Shulchan Aruch, before the Ramah's glosses were added, the mourning customs mentioned are almost entirely from between Rosh Chodesh Av and the 9th of Av, and the Ashkenazic communities, which were added later on, those glosses added in some more restrictions for the entire 3-week period. But getting back to our discussion, the baseless love for which Aaron HaKohen stood for. So let's look a little bit further into Aaron's behavior, and as the Mishnah tells us to be a student of Aharon, be a student of Aaron. This is from Pirkei Avot, which we're still learning each week, chapter of Pirkei Avot up until Rosh Hashanah. This week will be chapter number 3. And here we have a Mishnah from the first chapter of Pirkei Avot. Hillel says, "Be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing peace, loving the creations and bringing them closer to the Torah." Now, it's important to mention again, as we did back when we were learning Pirkei Avot, that the tractate of ethics of our fathers in the Mishnah is the one tractate that's exclusively dedicated to learning principles that are beyond the letter of the law. In Hebrew or Aramaic, it's called Milsa da Chasidusa, things of Chasidus, of being righteous, of piety. If you want to know how to live a more pious life than what we're required to do by the letter of the law, look in Pirkei Avot, look in Ethics of Our Fathers. And here, Hillel tells us, as seemingly an extra pious virtue principle that we should follow, that we wouldn't think that we need to do otherwise, is to pursue peace, love peace and pursue it, love creations and bring them closer to the Torah. Another very interesting nuance that we find in this particular Mishnah is, what does Hillel tell us? He tells us, be of the disciples of Aaron. This is probably the only place in the Mishnah, perhaps in the Talmud, that tell us you should be like a specific person. Usually it tells us, you want to teach peace. There's lots of lessons and rules that they should teach us what we should do. The Mishnah tells us you should make set times for studying Torah. It doesn't tell us be like this, be part of the students of Moses that taught Torah. It doesn't tell us regarding many of the other sages that had tremendous virtues to themselves and behaved in very special and unique ways. We don't find any other Mishnah that states that this is how you should behave. Be like the students of that person. Not only does it not say over here the Mishnah doesn't tell us, Hillel does not tell us you should learn from Aaron, that you should love peace and pursue peace. He specifically uses the words, you should be of the disciples of Aaron. You should be one of Aaron's students. You should be a student of Aaron. You should be a student of Aaron HaKohen. Love peace and pursue peace. So why is it that we have these nuances? Why is it that number one is mentioning the fact that you should be like the students of Aaron as an introduction to this lesson? Hillel could have just said, love peace and pursue peace. Love creations and bring them closer to the Torah. And number two, this is part of Pirkei Avot, part of going beyond the letter of the law, extra pious behavior which we're not required to do on our own. And we know there's many laws in the Torah that teach us how we should treat other people, and how we should refrain from entering any type of dispute as much as possible. So that's something that seems to be a requirement. So why is it here that he's telling this to us as something which is extra? So in the Rebbe's words, he says, why is it necessary for the Mishnah to begin with be of the disciples of Aaron? The main thing is the practical instruction to love peace. Why is it important to note that Aaron acted like this? The Mishnah gives other instructions, such as make your Torah study a permanent fixture of your life, without providing introduction like be of the disciples of Moses, who received the Torah at Sinai and devoted his entire life to it. Or some other example of a sage who was completely devoted to Torah study. Similarly, the instruction, be cautious in judgment, is not introduced with an example of anyone's specific conduct. Such elaboration is more appropriate to the Talmud or the commentaries on the Mishnah. Why does the Mishnah, in our case, introduce the instruction to love peace with the statement, be of the disciples of Aaron? In general, the Mishnah is extremely concise in its words. It's written very short-handed, and the entire Talmud, which is volumes and volumes, pages and pages, discussing and unpacking that which is held inside of a small few lines of a Mishnah, unpacking every single word, the order of the words, and why exactly was put in a particular place, each and every detail. But such an idea of telling us to be like the students of Aaron seems completely out of place in a Mishnah. And number two, as you mentioned, an additional point that requires explanation is peace extra altogether. Why does love peace belong in ethics of our fathers, which is devoted to instructions for pious conduct? Conflict is clearly forbidden by the Torah, as its sages teach. Anyone who perpetuates a dispute violates a prohibition, as it is stated, do not be like Korach and his assembly. And this is a clear verse in the Torah. The Torah tells us that we should not be like Korach was. Korach was riled up an entire community against Moses in his time. And the Torah tells us after Korach and his revolt against Moses were quelled and taken care of, the Torah tells us, don't be like Korach and his assembly. Moreover, the entire Torah was given in order to make peace in the world, in the words of Maimonides. Maimonides tells us that essentially the entire purpose of the entire Torah being given to us was to create peace and harmony within the worlds. peace does not seem to be an element of extra pious conduct. If according to Maimonides the entire Torah was given to us to bring peace, that's our lifelong job, and each and every mitzvah is to bring harmony between different seemingly opposite areas and bringing everything together for one common purpose of serving Hashem, bring godliness into the world and bring true peace and harmony into the world. So how could this be that this is an extra pious element? When the first Chabad Rebbe authored the Tanya, discusses many different ideas in our service of Hashem. In between everything else he discusses in chapter 32, the Alter Rebbe discusses the concept of loving your fellow with a baseless love. And the baseless love that he speaks about, he goes on to give us some ideas of how it is possible to create within ourselves a love for another person that may not behave appropriately, may sin tremendously. And the Alter Rebbe quotes this saying of the Mishnah of Hillel, that Hillel says, "Be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace. He should run after peace." And he concludes with the words, "Loving creations and bring them close to Torah." Now, if we think further about the exact words that Hillel uses, he says you should love the creations and bring them close to Torah. And here the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain how that term creations was also precise in the Mishnah. Because somebody that perhaps has nothing else good about them other than the very fact they were created by Hashem. Perhaps there's a person that we try to think of something good about that person and you can't think of anything. The one thing that every human being that was created in the image of Hashem, every Jewish person has that was created, is this very fact: they were created by Hashem. Creation of God. Anything that was created by Hashem was created for a purpose. There's something good to them. And therefore he says that Hillel specifically uses this term, loving the creations and bring them close to Torah, should be like Hillel, that loves the creations and bring them close to Torah, because creations themselves, even if there's nothing else good about them but for the very fact that they are Hashem's creation, that alone should invoke within us a reason to love that person. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain and describe how each and every one of us begin from the same place. We think about the source of where our souls come from. We're all start out in the same place. If we can remove everything else and look back at where we all came from, there's that point of creation, the point of where the souls originated from, that we all originated from the same place. We all have brotherly love and sisterly love to each other, coming from that such a deep place. And if for no other reason we can't bring ourselves to feelings of positivity and love for another person, just the very fact that Hashem created them should help us to have a positive feeling for another person. Another point here is very interesting, that in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe mentions, instead of as the Mishnah, which just says, Hillel says that you should be like the students of Aaron, but the Alter Rebbe in Tanya uses the words Hillel the elder. Instead of calling him just Hillel, mentions him Hillel the elder. So the Mishnah says, let's read here, B. The Mishnah says, Hillel said, why does the Alter Rebbe add Hillel the elder? We can't answer that he added the elder so that we would not make the mistake of thinking that the reference is to one of the other sages by the name of Hillel. The Alter Rebbe cites in Tanya teachings from other sages who share names, yet he did not feel the need to clarify exactly which sage it is in these instances. Moreover, the student of a Tanya can be assumed to know already which Hillel this is and does not need any clarification. So it's very interesting that the Alter Rebbe in the book of Tanya mentions specifically that it was Hillel Hazaken, Hillel the elder. This was the first Hillel. There were many Hillels, many people with the name Hillel. Why does he specifically mention Hillel Hazaken, Hillel the elder. So we'll look a little bit deeper. Once we look a little bit deeper into what was the behavior of Aaron, how did Aaron behave, what we can learn from that, we'll then be able to understand and unpack why it is that the Mishnah says specifically, be a student of Aaron, love peace, running after and pursue peace, love all the creations and bring them close to Torah. We'll also understand why the Alter Rebbe specifically mentions that he was an elder. It was the elder Hillel that said this and not somebody else. So let's look a little bit further into the behavior of Aaron. When the Mishnah says, be of the students of Aaron, love peace, it tends to teach us not only to love peace, but to do it like Aaron. The Mishnah is telling us something very unique. Not just that we should love peace, but we should love peace and pursue peace like Aaron did. Avot de Rav Natan elaborates on Aaron's conduct, relating that Aaron would even draw wicked people close, speaking to them with a smile. The next day, when that person would want to commit a transgression, they would think to themselves, what will Aaron say when he hears about this? I would rather act in a manner that befits a person whom Aaron talks to. So Avot de Rav Natan tells us another very interesting thing about Aaron. Besides bringing peace amongst people, he would be very welcoming and gracious, even to people that may not be behaving in the best way. Even someone that everyone else would just cast as an outcast, a slum, someone that's not behaving properly. Aaron would go to him and smile at him, say hello to them, try to engage with them. What would that cause that person? All of a sudden that person thinks, somebody's watching what I'm doing. Someone actually cares about me. He would go home and think to themselves he was about to do another bad act. He would think, tomorrow Aaron's going to see me again. He's going to greet me again. And I don't feel it's not becoming of me to do this, to behave in such a way and then go speak to a person of the stature like Aaron. And that was one of the methods, by just engaging with people, even if they did not behave in the best way, but just treating them in the very best, just because they were created by Hashem, and the potential that they have to become is what Aaron looked at and viewed at each person individually, even not based on their behavior, but based on their innate connection to Hashem, the soul that they have, and what they can become. Let's take a look here in the words of the Avot de Rav Natan itself, this medrash. What does it mean to love peace? One should love peace between Jews, between every individual, as Aaron did. As the verse states, true teaching was in his mouth, and injustice was not found on his lips. In peace and equity he went with me, and he brought many back from iniquity. This is a verse from Malachi. Rabbi Meir says, what does it mean that he brought many back from iniquity? What does that teach us? That he brought many back from sin? When Aaron went on his way and met a wicked person, he would greet them. The next day, that person had an urge to sin. He told himself, woe is to me, how will I raise my eyes and see Aaron? I am ashamed that he greeted me. Thus, this individual stopped himself from committing a sin. So by the very fact that he would go out and interact, is just saying hello and greeting other people and greeting each and every person, no matter what their background was, that itself would encourage people to behave in a better way. And this, based on this idea, we can now understand why it is so important for the Mishnah to tell us that we should be of the disciples of Hillel, be of the students of Hillel. The Mishnah says, Hillel says, be of the disciples of Aaron, love, peace, etc. The Mishnah uses the words, be of the students of Aaron, not just the words to the effect of follow on the path of Aaron. There are two general modes of conduct. So if we look at generally the approach to other people, there's two different approaches. There's students of Moses and students of Aaron. So we can be students of Moshe and there's students of Aaron. Students of Moses act in accordance with Torah law, which states that a person is not obligated to seek out every Jew, even wicked people, in order to engage with them. and ask them how they are doing. So from the Torah itself, someone that's a disciple, exclusively a student of Moses, what does Moshe teach? Moshe Rabbeinu teaches us exactly how we should behave according to the Torah, which people we should make as our friends, which people we should engage with, and there are those that perhaps we should stick away from. We don't want to be affected by those people and stay away from them. However, we then have the disciples of Aaron. Because of the way that Moses behaved, therefore, Moses did not have a relationship with all Jews. He did not have an intimate relation with everybody. He had an intimate relationship with those that wanted to learn, those that were behaving the way they should, those that were not doing exactly what they should. If they perhaps try to rebuke them, try to encourage them to do a little bit more, but that was not his unique strength. Aaron, however, acted beyond the letter of the law, drawing everyone close, even wicked people. This is why the verse states regarding Aaron's passing that the entire Jewish people cried. While regarding Moses' passing, it only states the Jewish people cried. It doesn't say the entire Jewish people cried. And as Rashi commented, it meant the males were feeling absence much more. So why is it that the entire Jewish people cried? Because that's exactly who Aaron was. Aaron went beyond the letter of the law, beyond what he was required to do, and saw each and every person for their deepest soul level of where they come from, who they are, what they could become, and where the very fact Hashem created them, if nothing else, would engage with them and try to help them. In addition to bringing peace amongst people, but the way that he interacted with others was with any person at whatever level he could engage with them at. This is why the Mishnah states, be of the disciples of Aaron. There are two possible paths of conduct. We have the possible path of Moses and that of Aaron. The Mishnah specifies that we need to be students of Aaron. If we want to choose a path in life, this is not just a decision to make regarding a specific individual. This is a lifelong journey approach of how we view other people. And this is how the Rebbe taught for all of his years and throughout all of his teachings, and instilled within all of his students just love for other people, love for fellow Jews. Doesn't matter what a person does. It matters, can I encourage a person to do a little bit more? Can I learn a little bit more? Be nice, just smiling at a person for who they are. That itself perhaps will encourage them to change in their behavior. Of course, we ourselves need to stand strong and firm in our beliefs and our studies, and be strongly rooted in our approach, so that we're not affected by others negatively who we interact with, but remaining above and beyond the negative aspects of other people, truly reaching out to other people and just viewing others without judging them, no matter what their background is, no matter what their observance is. The very fact that we're each part of, have a soul, we're each created in the image of Hashem, that itself is enough to behave in a way that is encouraging of other people. And if we look at that a little bit further, when the Alter Rebbe mentions this idea in the Tanya, he mentions it specifically in the name of Hillel Hazaken, Hillel the elder. What does an elder mean? What is the idea of an elder? We mentioned in past classes that Zaken is Zesh Shekana Chachma, a person that acquires wisdom. But in addition to that, in addition to being a person that acquired wisdom, the idea of an elder acquiring wisdom is that this is wisdom that others can learn from. This is an approach that gives extra credence and extra support for behaving in that particular way. So the Alter mentions Hillel's name. Specifically, he calls him Hillel Hazaken, Hillel the elder, because there's different types of behaviors. Even within Hillel's circle of friends himself, you had Hillel and Shammai. Shammai was known for being very strong and pushing away those that didn't fit into the exact character traits that he was looking for. As the many stories there are with people that came to Shammai that wanted potential converts that came to Shammai that wanted to convert, and with various approaches, one of which is a story of someone came to Shammai and told him that I want to become Jewish, I want to convert in order that I should become the high priest. I should become the Kohen Gadol. He walked past their study hall and he heard them studying the various garments, the various royal garments that the Kohen Gadol would wear. And he inquired and asked, who are these garments that you're speaking about? Who are they for? And they told him that it's for the Kohen Gadol, it's for the high priest. He's like, that sounds great. I want to be the high priest. He comes to Shammai and says, the head of the academy says, I want to become Jewish, that I become the high priest. Shammai had his measuring stick next to him on the table, and he picked it up and chased him away. The same guy went to Hillel and asked him the same question. And Hillel started learning with him and teaching him. He tells him that he wants to convert so that he can become a high priest. So he tells him, if you want to become a high priest, you first have to learn the laws. You have to learn everything about it. So he goes to learn about it, and he comes to the verse that says that anyone that enters the Holy of Holies that is a azar, azar hakarev yumas, whoever is a stranger that is not supposed to be doing the service enters, they'll die. They'll be instantly. So he comes to Hillel and asks him, this is what it says. Who is this speaking about, that whoever comes will die from doing the service that they're not supposed to be doing? So Hillel wisely answers him and tells him, even if it's the king of the Jewish people, a king like King David or Solomon or any other great sage that comes, even they, if they are not a Kohen or not the Kohen Gadol, not the high priest, are not allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. So he comes himself to the conclusion and says, woe is to me if even such great people will not be able to do this service. Certainly I, coming in from the outside, I haven't learned my whole life, and I've just acquired a Jewish soul by converting now. Certainly I am not befitting for that, and came to that conclusion on his own. There's many other stories of the difference between Hillel and Shammai. Hillel was always of encouraging people and bringing them with a much more loving approach, and Shammai was much more strict, which is one of the reasons that Hillel's rulings, the academy, when there's a dispute between the academy of Hillel and the academy of Shammai, majority of places, the final ruling is according to the academy of Hillel. And this is the approach that we can learn from and take. And this is why, coming back full circle to the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, is teaching us something pious beyond the letter of the law, is not just what are we required to do. We're not required to engage with everybody. We're not required to smile at those that are not good people, those that do not good things that we don't agree with. We have nothing in common with them other than that we were perhaps created by the same creator. We don't have anything to do. We don't need to have anything to do with them. Comes the Pirkei Avot and tells us what is beyond the letter of the law is to be like Aharon, be like Aaron the high priest. And what do we have to do in order to go follow in his ways? It's not just good enough to learn from him, because it's impossible to start liking everybody. It's impossible to start looking at people in that way unless we become Talmidav Shel Aharon, unless we become disciples, students of Aaron. When we become students of Aaron and learn from his approach and start viewing people, viewing each and every individual for their godliness, the soul that they have within them, it slowly starts becoming completely irrelevant how they behave, what they do in their personal lives, to the way that I interact and engage with them. We should always encourage them, smile at them, and perhaps they will turn around one day and start becoming better people. This is something which belongs specifically in Pirkei Avot, acting piously beyond what we're required. And this is why the Alter Rebbe, when he mentions Hillel Hazaken, Hillel the elder, to give extra importance to this type of behavior. And together with this, hopefully through all of us acting with baseless love, with love just for the pure sake of heaven, of Hashem, the pure sake of other people, for no other reason than they are created by Hashem, if nothing else. We don't need to have any reason to like people, to spread love and peace and harmony in the world. Through that, we'll be able to get rid of this terrible exile and all the suffering that we've encountered all these years. And in Yirtzeh Hashem, with Hashem's will, we will very soon be reunited together with Mashiach, when there will only be peace, prosperity, and happiness, and we'll all truly get along with each other. And not only will get along with each other, then we'll not only see goodness, but there'll actually only be goodness to see amongst us all.